Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the No Ceilings podcast. As you can probably tell if you're watching live with us on YouTube, Metcalf out again, load management, a little bit of a slacker. We're starting to get some medical concerns or red flags about his draft stock. But on a serious note, had to call up one of the OGs, one of the all-time greats. It's been way too long since me and you have been on a pod together. So, usually that means we're working somewhere. But Corey Tolaba, the NBA draft dude, coming in hot to talk big board. How are we doing, sir? How are we holding up?
Dirty Dancer says rumors are Metcalf is still frozen on screen. Great callback. I am doing fantastic. We tried to record a podcast together when we were literally in the same room for a bunch of days in April at the Nike Hoop Summit. But since apparently we finally figured out the exact time when we needed a producer, which was that week in April, we didn't have one, so we couldn't figure it out. So finally, we can make that up and talk a little bit of basketball for the lovely people watching. And what better way to do that than by breaking down the latest No Ceilings NBA Big Board version 8, mere weeks away from the NBA draft?
It's insane to say that after this cycle has just been an absolute gauntlet. It's been awesome. I think we and you were terrified coming into this year, like understanding the type of talent that was coming in. But I think it's been awesome to kind of just have so many debates, throughout the year. A lot of second guessing, a lot of really deep film dives. But yeah, I mean, we're cooking. It's been fun right now. We only got a couple of weeks left to go. Yeah, cooking with gas, and a lot of good stuff on the way for everyone listening. We got some very big guests lined up, so draft community is going to want to pay close attention, I think, next week. It's going to be a very, very big week around here. But Corey, what are we thinking? Do we just dive into this beast, or how are you holding up with this class? Are you ready for it to be done? Are you just prepared for the chaos? Where are you at?
This is my favorite. It's my favorite class ever. This is my favorite class ever.
It's fantastic. Everyone's joking about it, but it's fantastic.
Yeah. A lot of talent, maybe not, there's no victor, and that's fine. But the fact that, everybody can have all of these differing opinions around the draft space, I think is so cool. I mean, you look at our big board and you're going to find something totally different if you go on to Swish Theory's big board, or if you listen to an episode of Upside Swings, or you hop on the YouTube stream with Sam Vecini and Bryce at Game Theory. Like, no matter what section of the draft internet that you follow, you're going to find different opinions. And I think that's so cool because we know that the draft itself is pure chaos. I can't imagine that this draft itself is not going to be any less chaotic with how flat some of the tiers are as far as talent goes, man. So I think it's super cool that, we have so many differing opinions on prospects, because somebody's got to be right between all of these takes, right? So I'm pumped. I feel like at No Ceilings, we've been blessed to grow so much this year. And so much of that is because of all the people that are like watching live on YouTube and Twitter. So like, shout out to everybody watching live right now in the chat. We got Hiswa from showing love from Australia, all Starkinen, which I love. You guys rock. So like you guys rock too. Nick's The Streets Are Buzzing says Celtics 7. Big week ahead coming up for you. I choose Mavs in 6. So I guess we can start it off like that and get right into it and just bypass Rucker's feelings on that matter.
Yeah, I mean, I probably won't talk for a while if Celtics can't get it done this year. But yeah, as Corey said, just want to echo that to everybody. The growth this year has been tremendous. And to all the talented, draft evaluators out there, I think that's why this year has been so awesome, is because everyone's got a different opinion. And we all understand how passionate fans are in this space, how passionate some of these talent evaluators are. And we know who's putting in the work. And it's really cool this year. It's boring when everyone agrees. It's cool when everyone has a different point of view that they're passionate about. And I think that's why, guys like us that are evaluating the draft year round, that's why this is such a special year, because everyone's passionate. Everyone's got a little bit of a different opinion. And, surely no one's going to overreact next year after 1 year of results. So it's going to be fun.
And speaking of which, like some of the guys that we liked coming into the year that didn't exactly live up to expectations, or just guys that we had kind of identified as potential guys in the future, like those guys are maybe guys that are going to add to the depth of next year's class. So I think it's cool that this year, in some ways, as usual, is going to carry over into next year, and we can reset our expectations and evaluations to see how a guy's grown from one year to the next, given that some of the guys who were considered, potential top 5 guys are going to be in next year's class because they, didn't exactly come out of the gate swinging. And that's fine, because as we'll see here with a lot of older prospects, sometimes development takes a little bit longer than, we want to expect. Sometimes it just takes time. Right. So I think that it's super cool that, we're almost at the finish line. Not quite. We're still going to have more mocks, more big boards coming out until we get to that finish line. But I think, I'm ready to dive into this one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's do it. For everyone listening, you should have checked it out. We had a latest big board for No Ceilings. Some of you that aren't watching live, you're going to hear this tomorrow morning. And guess what? We've got a mock draft up in the morning. So things are getting really cooking. It's an important time of the year because with a draft that has so much uncertainty, I know a lot of everyone at No Ceilings knows Intel is going to be cooking these upcoming weeks, and you still ask around right now, and there's so much uncertainty. So I think a lot of teams don't know what they're doing, and that's why these private workouts are going to be really important. But latest big board. What are your first thoughts? I mean, me and Metcalf usually go through 5 at a pop, but because I got the NBA draft, dude, we can do whatever you want. So you tell me how you're feeling, or what your thoughts were from the No Ceilings composite board.
I don't want to break tradition here.
Okay.
I think going 1 through 5 is ideal, but I think the thing that we should talk about first here is our 4th prospect on this list, because it's I think Nikola Topic has been in the news, so let's stick to current events, right? Nikola Topic, it came out that he now has a torn ACL, or has had a torn ACL with that second knee injury. It also came out that he, officially, I guess, quote unquote, because we did talk about it in February for No Ceilings Plus subscribers, but Jonathan Gavoni reported that Topic has a 6'5.5" wingspan, which was less than the reported 7-foot wingspan, which was an error on one of the websites that people ran with. But he is, he's also 6'7", so he's negative wingspan guy, but still great size. But does the knee injury change anything for you in how you're ranking Topic this year? And if you were a team, would you do anything differently? If you were really in love with Topic, does this knee injury change anything for you?
I mean, the truth is it's going to come down to your medical staff. This is where this is why those guys get paid what they do. And this is, you're going to have to turn to him and be like, is he going to get cleared? And is he going to be okay? And I even reached out to a scout about this. And he kind of gave me a little heads up about, he's like, I think Topic's ACL report came out next day. I was like, ooh, all right, 1 for 1. Good job. And I said, hey, well, what would you do? And he's like, hey, it's just all the pressure now is going on team doctors, which completely makes sense, because you've got to feel comfortable enough taking this guy, and that this isn't going to be something that happens all the time. I think with me personally, it's not going to completely move him down my board, because this is still one of the youngest guys in this class. I still love the tools. It's just going to come down to, I would want the doctor to give me the green light. And if that does, then I'm going ahead. And I think teams will get a little scary, Corey. I think they'll get a little scared of I don't know. But I think some team might get a pleasant surprise if he falls down a little bit. If you're in the mindset of hey, young talent, maybe we redshirt for a little bit, let them develop, let them get healthy, and then we can have a fantastic piece. I think, I'm just speculating right now, but I feel like if he somehow is on the board with the Spurs at 8, they would jump all over that still. What about you? What do you think?
ACLs aren't what they used to be. The ACL tear changed my personal fandom, being a Bulls fan. And I feel like the Derrick Rose ACL tear was the first time that it felt oh my God, an ACL is end of the road here. You tear an ACL, your career is completely changed in one way or the other. Before that, it was the what was the knee injury that Amari had, or the surgery that microfracture?
Yes.
It was like if you got microfracture, right, like your career was over. Then people stopped getting microfracture. Then they were tearing their ACL, and now it's like the Achilles. And I think even the Achilles, we're seeing people come back from. So I just think like medical science has evolved to handle fixing an ACL, and Topic is 18, so like the fact that he's younger, I think he's going to have like an easier time recovering from it. Yeah, of course, ultimately it's going to be like a team has to feel comfortable that his knee isn't completely shattered. Now every team is going to have access to these medicals, where in the past that wasn't the case. So, at least teams can feel a little bit more confident, but I'm not a doctor. I don't have access to the medicals. If it's just an ACL tear, I don't see any reason that it should completely change how you feel about this player. Topic wasn't somebody who was going to come in next year and lead you to a championship. So if he has to miss some of next season, and you're a team who's drafting this high and you're going to take him, I don't necessarily think that's going to change how you view like your process. Like if you think Topic is a special passer who has this crazy rim gravity and can finish, and you believe that his 88% free throw shooting is going to eventually translate out to the 3-point line, then I think you take him irregardless of, what the knee injury currently is, because the games aren't starting tomorrow and you're not winning a championship 6 months from now. So you can afford to take that long view with a guy like Nikola Topic.
I completely agree. I think, obviously it hits home a little hard for you, but I think if Topic, we were talking about this 6'4", like Derrick Rose, just super explosive guy that relies on his athleticism. Yeah, I'd probably get a little bit more concerned, but Topic is not going to be known for his athleticism. We're still getting a 6'7" guard with good feel that does his damage with vision, anticipation. So I think I'm right there with you. It wouldn't sway me too much unless, my medical staff's really coming in being like, hey, this is something you might want to be careful. Then I'm like, okay, I could probably try to find somewhere else. But because of his age, because of the skills, because of the size, everything he's got going, I would still be jumping on that at some point. For everyone not watching, I'm just doing a quick little top 5. Number 1, we had Alex Sarr. 2, Stephon Castle. 3, Donovan Clingan. 4, Nikola Topic. And 5, Reed Shepherd, who seems to continue to buzz, Corey. It's a shocker. Continues to buzz. I feel like he's the name heating up for sure. You want to talk about Reed, or do you want to move on to the next 5?
You know what? I can always talk about Reed. I actually kind of want to talk about Castle.
Yeah, thank you. You read my mind. I was like, I need to get Corey's thoughts on Castle. Everyone's a little, how do I say this nicely? They're struggling viciously to buy into the upside of Stephon Castle. Where are you at? I continue to have
freaking love this.
Lord.
I love this dude, man. I love him. The measurements where he's going to be like 6'7" in shoes again, like he is legit wing size. I feel like is he a point guard? Is he not a point guard conversation is just distracting from the fact that this dude is just a badass basketball player. And like, I did an entire thread on Twitter. And I've been so damn busy, like editing film sessions, working on the draft guide, writing a piece, doing all this other stuff. And I was like, you know what? I can't face this slander of people going, Stephen Castle is like, doesn't have the passing chops to play point guard. Like, first of all, point guards don't exist anymore.
No, they don't.
Who's the point guard on the Boston Celtics and the Dallas Mavericks right now? Can you just pick and identify one guy?
No, because they have different guys bring up the ball all the time. I think it's a position that's not dying, but I think you're also just finding teams are now looking for guys like, just give me the best 5 guys on the court who can handle the rock, who can at least start. Like we're getting the ball up to, I'm just saying the Celtics. Tatum brings it up. Jaylen Brown brings it up. They give it to Derek White. They give it to Drew Holiday. They're running the offense through the bigs. Like it's about the pieces now. It's about the talent and the versatility and passing, playmaking. Obviously, yes, you want to have a talented ball handler, but I feel like that comes into the picture more when you're trying to be like, hey, we need a bucket here. Like, get us something. Here's Kyrie Irving, go to work. But I'm right there with you.
But Castle can handle the ball.
Yes.
And he could pass.
people are too obsessed with his ability, like his quickness, and he just gets his body into you and overpowers you.
He's patient.
Like, patient. That's I've told you before. Like he reminds me the way he plays of Sean Livingston. And I know you guys were kind of like, and I was like, I'm not saying the build. I'm saying he will just work you down into the post. He'll get to his spots. To pick
I get Andre
apart.
Miller, Sean. Yeah,
yes,
I get like
yes,
that. Yeah,
yes.
sure. Like go watch how like Castle and Klingon would run like the snug pick and rolls, and like even in those tight spaces, like he's coming off, he's going back for the rescreen. I mean, this dude is like spinning off of him. He's doing point guard things. He's just not dominating usage. And honestly, that's like what you want. Yeah, like Zay in the chat says he reminds me of Jimmy Butler a little. That was the impression. You guys know I was covering the Big East tournament live at Madison Square Garden, and I told you, I was like, this dude looks like Jimmy Butler out there.
You guess what? That. Yeah, you're
Jimmy,
like, hey, this is Jimmy Butler.
Jimmy Butler started to play a little bit of point guard or ball handler initiator in Chicago. Now he does it a lot in Miami. So like it doesn't matter what position he is. What matters is the fact that he can contribute, and he's set himself with a floor because he's probably the best perimeter defender in the draft. If he's not the best, he's up there. And he has kind of the feel and the ability to make things happen off the ball, whether it's as a cutter who's then making like a dump off or short roll read. And all he's got to do is figure out, okay, can I get back a little bit to having the freedom? Because I don't even want to say the confidence. I want to say the freedom to shoot some of those shots that he shot in high school. Now, I don't think he's ever going to be, this insane off the bounds 3-point shot maker. That's not going to be his game. He's going to be a guy who's patient and gets to his spots and does all these things. But like he's going to take threes. I don't think he's afraid to shoot. He started shooting it better. He became, he's a pretty decent free throw shooter, and he really started coming on towards the end of the year as a free throw shooter. Like he was not missing. The dude's a hooper, man. Like, so if somebody said they had him at 1, I would not bat an eye. He's not necessarily my number 1 guy, but I think that in the modern NBA, for a dude without a shot, he has everything else that you need. And so the fact that he came out at 2 on our board, I absolutely loved that from the team. And he's somebody we've been high on all year. We never really wavered. I even, at one point, I was at a game scouting live, and I was talking to the front office person in the league, and they were like, last time I checked, you guys had Castle at 6, huh? And this is when he was kind of struggling. And I was like, yeah, we like him. Like I know he's not playing well, whatever, but like we like him. And he came on. He was a contributor as a freshman to a national championship. I think he's going to be good. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I think we need to praise what he does instead of focusing on what he's not. He brings too much to the table. The defense of strides he took from high school are ridiculous. Like now he's looking like a potential all lockdown defender. I think the guard stuff everyone's obsessing with right now, but this is a guy, like you put it perfectly. At the end of the day, dude's a hooper. Like the dude, we would not be surprised if Castle figures out a way to play 10 years in the NBA because he's got great defensive ability. He's got versatility.
10 plus years.
10 plus years.
If he only played 10 years, I'd be surprised.
I just think there's way too much upside. And I understand people concerned about the shot. I think we need to applaud him for what he did coming into this UConn team and saying, I don't want to be the guy. I want to figure out how to win. Like he said that with Dan Hurley when they were recruiting him. He's like, I want to be a winner. What do I got to do? Came in, they said, play good defense, make the right passes. And playing in that system, we see it all the time. UConn just hammers home like, hey, pass up a good shot for a better shot. They had a lot of talent. He had to accept a role to play along this team. And I just love him. Like I recently talked to a scout and he's like, I'd take Castle at 1. And he's like, because I feel the best about his ability to make an impact at the NBA level, given his skills compared to the other guys. He's like, I just feel the best. And he's like, he had his questions too. He's like, the athleticism, the vertical pop, yeah, it's a little concerning, but he's like, I just like the way he plays. He's talented and tough, and he's got that positional size and versatility. So I just think it's interesting to see so many people kind of cooling on him, but I wonder if that's the buzz about the reports.
I actually think the athleticism stuff is weird too.
Yeah. It's more power than,
dude,
I don't know.
when I was at the game, one of the games that I watched at the tournament, he on one end came over, help side, volleyball spiked a block, ran the floor, and went up for an alley-oop dunk that he missed, not because he couldn't go get it, because it was a bad pass, but he got up in a way that you were like, okay, like this dude's got bounce. It was like defense to offense. And this is somebody who had a knee injury that people were worried about. That's not even talked about really anymore. He has a knee injury that he came back from and worked his way through. So it's not even, I doubt that his knee was fully healthy during the season. So I just think that he really has all of the tools that you want. And now it's about finding the right organization like a San Antonio Spurs, which would be so scary if him and Victor were on the floor together doing their thing. Man, I think that would be a special pairing. And that's not even talking about who you might get with that second pick that San Antonio has. So, I mean, if this guy falls, I mean, I think Kristen Peak reported that he's not falling past 6 to Charlotte, and that makes all the sense in the world. But if he falls past that, I mean, Portland's got to jump all over that. But we can talk about Castle all day.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on, because I think you're cooking with something with the Spurs at 4. That's still one I would be shocked if they're not intrigued. But went through the top 5. Now we're going to get a little juicy. Zachary Richelet at 6, Dalton Connect at 7, Cody Williams at 8, Rob Dillingham at 9, Jared McCain at 10. The floor is yours, Mr. Tolobo. What are you thinking?
I think it's interesting. I guess I don't remember where Richelet was. I guess it was at 6 on the last board that we did.
Been on 6.
So I feel like he really came on in a big way over the last month in these playoffs. I mean, it was pretty impressive. I think, you look at ESPN, they've had him at 1. There's rumors he won't fall past 2. I don't necessarily buy any of that with him. I don't think he's the type of talent that it's like, I can't let this guy slip through the cracks. But I feel like the way that he contributed to an actual high level situation, coming back after a slump, being a two-way player, really starting to rebound. I feel like that's the kind of player he's going to be. Him kind of falling down to 6, I guess 6 is probably appropriate. I mean, because this is probably even around the area that I have him currently. But I thought it was interesting because I felt like other people on our team would probably be a little bit higher on him. But just whatever the case, he seems like he's really figured himself out and who he is and what he's comfortable with, and just understanding who you are as a player. I think it's really important when you're trying to figure out your role at the next level. And I think that he's going to have one that's defined, and I think that's a real positive for him.
Yeah, so he was sick. We usually do 1 big board a month for no ceilings. Feel like draft months, that goes to 2. His last month, we had him at 6. Month before, I believe we had him at 2. And then the month before that, we were at 3. But that was also when he was having that cool stretch and everyone was just plummeting him down. And I feel like it impressed me even more that the no ceilings team, we were all kind of like, we're not moving down that aggressively. Like everyone was kind of on the same page, and we don't talk about, our submissions. It's kind of a blind thing because we like to see the results. I think what you just said was the most important thing with a lot of these guys. And I think it's a big hat tip to Richelet. Like, he is figuring out what he's going to be. He's not unrealistic. I think a lot of teams are looking for that in this class. Like, do guys understand what they're going to provide? And they're not being unrealistic, and someone, that's going to go 14th is like, hey, I could be the next KD. I think teams right now are like, okay, let's be realistic. If we're going to try to draft,
pump the brakes.
Yes, let's pump the brakes a little bit. And I think with some of these guys understanding what their role is going to be early on, that's great. And I think that's why Richelet might be buzzing right now, because teams are seeing a path in which he can be a valuable piece. He's still young. Like, I went back and watched some of his stuff before this year, and he looks so much smoother this year. Like, his shot was a little herky-jerky last year. So I think it's crazy. We saw him in Portland. I did not see this type of player. in 1 year. Like it just didn't. It looks like a completely different human being. So I think that's just a big step for him.
Yeah, the confidence in Portland wasn't there fully. He looked unsure of himself in a lot of ways. He looked huge and he looked talented, but it was like if he's gonna let his head get in the way, that's the type of thing where it's just like some guys just don't work no matter how talented they are. And then he had that not great off the summer with France and like not have what do you have 2 points in the final, something like that. Like he just was a no show, and you're just like, all right, like he's one of these guys who's going to be in his head. And then he just came out and he turned himself into the player that teams are going to hope that he'd be. And if he's that guy, it's a really valuable piece. And I want to set expectations. Like he could be kind of like Keegan Murray, right?
Yeah.
Like but he's 19 or whatever, and Keegan was a little bit older when he came out. So if he could be Keegan Murray in the league, that's a hell of a piece to continue building a team with. It's probably not going to change the future of your franchise necessarily, but it's definitely going to help bring you a step in the right direction. And if next year's draft is as strong as we think it is, if he's not going to help you win games next year, that doesn't mean that when that next piece, that Cooper Flagg, that Dylan Harper, that whoever evolves into that superstar piece, that Richelet is not going to be there to be the perfect kind of wingman. Not even necessarily a sidekick, but he's like, the fourth Avenger, who he's Hawkeye or something, right? Like, yeah, he doesn't have to be Robin, but like he could be a Hawkeye who, is still making an impact. So, yeah, I've been impressed by Zachary.
Because you were a little cooler on him to start the year, right? And we could keep going. You were a little cooler.
Yeah, I was.
I get it, because I was
not.
Like,
because I was like, show me something, and then his 3-point percentage was so crazy through the roof, and his free throw percentage wasn't. And I was like, so I don't think this is he's turned into like a massively better shooter. I just think he's hot right now. And
all-time Peter, like Vegas, you don't leave the table here for months.
Absolutely insane. And so I was a little bit cool, and then when he went on that cold streak, I was like, see, this is where it gets interesting. And then he kind of leveled himself out, and that was impressive. And I think he's been shooting free throws better at this point too. So I still think he's got a lot of potential, and I think that if he continues to trend in this direction and builds off this last season, he could be a great piece for somebody.
Absolutely. Okay, let's keep it moving. Let's keep this party rolling.
All right.
Cody's still staying there. No, we don't have to talk about Cody, but I'm just doing quick hitters while we're running.
No, I'm not shocked. I like Cody. I went back and watched some stuff, and I get how he ended, and I'm trying to be level-headed about everything because it wasn't great, and I don't want to just show like a bias because I kind of like Cody's game and be like, oh, well, this was great. But even though he finished so I don't know how to put it, not terribly, but he just lackluster.
It looked like a guy that clearly got hurt.
Yeah, and he fought through it, and that was great. He came in light at the combine. I think he was probably a little bit shorter than he looks, maybe because he's so like pencil-like in frame. But ultimately, I still think he has a good frame to put on weight down the line. We have to remember, for everybody that's going to compare him to his brother was much older than him coming out of college and had time to physically develop. So we have to give Cody that same time, but I buy the touch. I buy the finishing. Again, he's one of these, like, I don't have high expectations for a lot of these players that they're going to be a featured player. I think for most of these guys, if they make it to be a third option in an offense, you got a hit on your hands.
Yes.
And so it's just about tempering expectations. So I still buy it. I think the form looks good. I want him to rebound more. I will say that. I would love for him to crash that glass. I think that that's just something I want to do. But to me, like there's a little bit of a safety with Cody because even when he's not playing well, he's not necessarily taking anything off the table. And I think that's an important point for young players because if you're somebody who's really mistake prone, a coach is going to pull you. You know, like you have to be able to learn from those mistakes. And I don't think Cody makes a ton of mistakes. He just has to be willing to exert himself a little bit more in situations. But he was playing off KJ Simpson. He's playing off Tristan Da Silva, upperclassmen, veterans to the college game. Like he knew that it wasn't his time to just take over just because he was a 5-star or whatever. He was a guy who played his role. And again, I think that's valuable when you're playing a role that is probably going to somewhat similarly mirror who you are at the next level. And then from there, once you get on the court, like if you have this potential, being on the court and developing on the floor because you're not taking stuff off the table is going to allow you to get those reps to experiment further. It's how you build the trust of a coaching staff. And when you build that trust, the coaches are going to let you then try to expand your game because they know that you're going to do all of this other stuff. So that's kind of why I haven't soured on Cody. You know, like I don't think he should be the top pick in the draft or anything, but in this range, you know, like a team like Portland, if they took him, he fits the mold of what they've liked with their forwards, right? Like long, multi-tools, can bring the ball up, you know, maybe not the best shooter, but some potential to shoot it down the line. You're not taking the ball out of Scoot's hands. You're not taking the ball out of Ant Simon's, Shaden Sharp's hands. Just be a connective piece. Like you have to understand that a lot of these teams have an infrastructure already, and these guys are going to have to fit in around that. So, yeah, I still like Cody, man.
I do too. I thought coming into the year, I thought I was going to be a little surprised if he was a one and done. Like I just thought the frame he was going to need another year. So he's already exceeded my expectations. I know how the season ended. I completely get it. It wasn't the best film, but when he didn't, before you see those injuries happen, before he starts getting banged up, and yes, he's thin framed. He's going to have to work on his frame. Before that happened, he was very impressive on film. Like I loved how smooth he was. I love the versatility, the upside. So I think you're taking Cody, whatever team lands him is going to be really pumped that maybe, hey, you spend a year getting some reps in the G, or you get some time to have his body fill out. And then like you're saying, with a lot of these guys, next year you get the juggernaut class to pair with these guys. You're really cooking with something. Okay, let's keep this party going.
All right. So what, 11, we got Devin Carter. 12, we got Ron Holland. 13, Modest Buzelis. 14, Tristan Da Silva. And 15, Kyle Filipowski. Which of these guys do you want to pontificate about first?
You have an article coming out about one of those names that everyone's going to be very excited to talk about. So do you want to
I do.
You want to keep that? Let's keep that stored.
Yeah, I kind of touched on that player on the NBA draft show on yesterday's episode. So, or I guess today if you're watching live. So we can, I don't need to go too deep on that because I do have a piece coming out, like you said, on Monday about him. So what direction do we want to go now?
Let's talk about Devin.
Okay. Let's do
He's
it.
Buzzing. He's the name.
He's
the name buzzing right now. A lot of steam. A lot of buzz about Devin. Some speculation about a promise. Some counter speculation about there isn't a promise. Everyone seems very intrigued and excited. I've even heard rumors that maybe some teams are trying to trade up for him. I get it. I love him. He's been some of my favorite film I've watched this year. I think he's an absolute dog on the court. I think teams are understanding guys like that figure out a way to stick and be effective. And I just go at it. Like I turned on his film for a deep dive. And it just, I left and I was like, whew, this dude can play. Where are you at with Devin?
I love him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love him. Yeah. Again, when I was at the Big East tournament, I was like, I need to see this dude up close in person. Saw him multiple times, and the energy, just frenetic. You know, he had the place going crazy. He's everywhere. He was making shots with range. And the shot is the thing that, you know, was the biggest concern for me because he doesn't have a history of shooting it well over his first 2 years. He had this big bump. He's a mediocre free throw shooter. He's a pretty bad, like long two, like mid-range shooter. And so it's like, all right, how real is this 3-point shooting? I was like, I got to see him like warm up it. Like I'm paying attention to the warm ups, and I saw him miss his first like 8 shots, and I was like, no. I was like, please no. And
nothing
and
worse
then,
than that. You're like,
and,
might answer my question early.
I was like, come on, man, I'm trying to get a video to post to social. Like, just hit one. And then first play of the game, where his first shot, he hits this fall away shot from the left wing, falling out of bounds from like the, secondary sponsor logo, like 3 feet behind the 3-point line. And I was like, this is why this dude rocks. Like, gamer. Like, he's going to get after it when the lights are the brightest. This was the same week he won Big East Player of the Year. So he was playing like his hair was on fire. I think, they needed this to have a chance to get into the tournament. And he did everything that he could. I thought he really like outplayed Trey Alexander in the game against Creighton. And I thought that was a good, a matchup I wanted to really get a good look at, considering, at the time Trey was still kind of in the mix. But the unbelievable athlete had, an awesome combine, broke the 3-quarter sprint record. The dude measured +7, I think. Like, he's 6'2", 6'9" wingspan or something like that, something close to that. I just think he's going to be a dude who helps people win games, and I think, a lot of the speculation is that Devin Carter got a promise from Chicago. And, there are some Bulls fans that are really happy about that. And that makes sense, just because Chicago went and they traded for Pat Bev. They went and got Javon Carter, right? So like, they're clearly looking for this kind of player. Then there were some Bulls fans who were like, this is crazy. Like, how could you take a Devin Carter ahead of a Modest Buzelis or a Ron Holland or one of these guys who are younger with more potential? And my opinion on it is like, this is a dude who may not win you the title by you drafting him in year one, but when you're a team that clearly needs a reset in culture, he will help you build it. He knows what it takes to be a pro because his dad was one, is a coach in the league with Memphis. Obviously, a lot of smoke with them because of those reasons as well. And it almost reminds me, like, if we take it and we keep it with the Bulls, considering maybe, that's where the promise came from, if one happened, that it would be kind of like when they drafted Kirk Heinrich and they didn't have a direction. And it was just like, you know what, we got to get a pro in here. Like, you're going to get a pro with him, somebody who plays a long time, isn't necessarily going to be an all-star, but is just going to do things that help you win. So that's why I love Devin Carter so much. I don't have these false expectations that he's going to be this crazy shot creator or like, manipulative passer. I just think he is going to be a dude who has an impact on NBA basketball games that you're going to be able to see a lot over the next 10 years in high leverage playoff games. And I think that's important.
I'm right there with you. I think you put it perfectly when you're saying he might not win you a title, but, when you get to the playoffs, Devin Carter might be the reason you won a series. And Devin Carter might be the building block you need to get things right. I'm a big believer of go get your guy. And I think in the draft, if you're making a power rankings of guys like that, where you're just like, to heck with it, we're going to go get him. We want him. We'll be so happy if we leave this draft with him. I think Devin Carter might be at the top. Because you are getting a pro. You're getting a guy that's going to be not afraid of the moment. He's going to go to battle every night. I'm a sucker for NBA bloodlines. Like, his dad played, dad still coaches. He had a stretch this year, 13 games where he averaged 22, 8, 4, almost 2 steals a game on 48, 40, 74. Like, you watch some of that film, like, he took a lot of shots where you're like, what? Why are you attempting that? And then all of a sudden it goes in, you're like, my goodness. So I think that'll get watered down a little bit with not so much of an offensive load, but he just impacts the game a lot of ways. Like, I love the feel he has, the patience on some drives to kind of wait for the angles to open up. I love the playmaking. I think he's scrappy defensively. And then we saw the athleticism. I think he's just a guy, like, go get him, be happy about it. And I will say, like, the promises have been buzzing. Usually telling when it's that early of a promise, because now teams are going, okay, well, if that's true, we got to get up in front of insert team. So we'll see. I think there's a lot of counter points right now, and intel coming in the next couple of weeks is going to be crazy because there's going to be a lot of reports all over the place.
Definitely going to be a lot of intel, a lot of reports, a lot of smoke, a lot of agent,
Yep.
agent to media guy, a lot of, team to media to put stuff out to get maybe their guy where they need. It's going to be a lot of fun chatter. Anybody else in this group that you want to touch on?
No, because we'll be here for ever.
All right. So 16, we got Isaiah Collier. 17, we got Bub Carrington. 18, Jacoby Walter. 19, Zach Edey. 20, Keyshawn George.
I'm really proud. I warned people with Metcalf last month when we had Bub Carrington at 40 because he had made a big jump to get to 40. And I said, now that we know he's in, watch what happens in the next one, because now everyone gets to go be like, hey, Bub's in. Let me go watch all the film. And like I said before, we do not talk about our rankings before we submit big boards. Like how we do it at No Ceilings is we just say, hey, submit your big board by this day. Thank you. And then we put the numbers together. And putting this together for the graphics, I was like, whoa, Bub, that was a big jump. So, and I think it's well-deserved. I think he's one of the upside swings I would want to go get. Like I just talked about going to go get Devin Carter. I think if you're looking for an upside swing, I would want to get Bub because I think there's a lot of really fun stuff developing. And I know you just did a film sesh with Bub, breaking down film with him. So like, what are your thoughts? Hit me with it. I mean, I
would take him in the top 10.
I think this is a redraft guy that we're taking very early.
I would take him in the top 10.
I don't think you're crazy.
I think, like you said, he's one of the upside swings in a draft that, look, if you're going to tell me that Carlton Carrington ends up being a better upside swing than Modis or Isaiah Collier or Ron or any of these young guys, like, why not? He's arguably the best pull-up shooter in the draft. I think, Dillingham probably just due to the percentages and the consistency throughout the year is probably the guy that you have to say is the best. But Carrington took a ton of pull-ups. He shot 50% on mid-range shots. His pace is crazy. Showed really, really high-level passing potential, playmaking feel, great assist-to-turnover ratio, and he came in at the same weight as Ron Holland.
More.
And this is...
Oh, no, yeah, as Ron Holland,
I think he was like 3 pounds less. I think he was 187 or something. Ron was like 190, something like that. So like, he was fooling people a little bit with that, long sleeve shirt, not letting them see the frame. 6'5", 6'8" wingspan, combo guard. He told me in that film sesh that he's working on, making sure that he can be a more consistent spot up shooter, because as of now, he's felt more comfortable playing with the ball in his hands, and I think that's going to be important at the next level. But yeah, man, he played in the ACC. It's not like this is some, mid-major dude who had like 20-year-old, 21-year-old who was doing this. This is one of the youngest domestic born players in the class who showed these really high-level flashes, fills up the box score, not without his warts, right? Like, needs to get to the rim more. He knows that. We talked about it. He needs to become more consistent as a spot-up shooter, but the tools are there, and the mind is there, and he's willing to accept constructive criticism. He comes from a great family. He has a good head on his shoulders. This is not somebody who isn't going to, know that he has to work and what he has to work on and is going to have his head filled up. He wasn't this 5-star prospect who was told he was awesome all the time. He knows that he's going to have to work, but he also, isn't using that as like, I need to prove everybody wrong. He wants to prove himself right. So I think that he's the wild card.
Yes.
He's the guy where it's like, Portland's got 2 picks, San Antonio's got 2 picks, and all of a sudden it's draft night, and he's ending up in the lottery because he's the primo, he's the Josh Giddey, he's the name whoever jumped up higher than people thought that night. It's easy to see in hindsight, be like, oh, Giddey 6th. He was not considered the 6th pick in the draft through most of that cycle. He was like a 15, 16, maybe back end of the lottery guy, and then he jumped up all the way up. I could see Carrington having a big jump for a team that wants to take a swing with a guy that kind of has, like, I think, a pretty safe floor given his skill set too. Yeah. So, like, I don't know. I'm a big Bub fan, man.
I think someone's gonna swing. He's becoming the wild card for me. I think if we're looking at draft night and we're gonna be shocked by a name that we're like, whoa, it makes sense, but it just was earlier than we were expecting. I think Carrington's gonna be at the top of that list because, like you said, it's always interesting this time of the year when someone's buzz is quiet, and I feel like his is too quiet because I know there's curiosity. So, like, teams also will try to be quiet about a guy that they like him because they don't want it to get around that, it's everything this upcoming weeks is about misdirection. It's like what Corey said earlier, like agents are pushing out stuff. You're trying to navigate, you're trying to get some buzz going or cooling. And I just feel like Carrington's the name where I'm like, okay, Bub's going to be one of the top names I ask about because of the tools, because of the age. He's going to turn 19 after Summer League. I think there's just a really good foundation for him to be one of the studs of this class when we look down the road and we're like, ooh, Carrington turned into a really nice piece. So going to be interesting. At San Antonio at 8, maybe that's the extreme curveball we're not expecting, depending on what they do at 4. We'll see. Anybody else, or we want to keep this going?
Let's keep this party moving along, I think, because if me and you start talking about Zach Edey, we're gonna have to end this. We're gonna have to end the stream from Fisticuffs. So let's hit. This is I think a controversial one. We'll run through the next 5. We got Tijon Solon at 21, Tyler Smith at 22, Deron Holmes at 23, Khalil Ware at 24, Johnny Furphy at 25. I think we should talk about Tijon because he's been buzzing. Kristen Peak mocked him in the top 5. This is obviously very low, comparatively to, I think, where a lot of media is with him. I think Gavoni posted today 6'10", 7'2" wingspan, one of the youngest guys in the class, 220 pounds, I think, is what he was listed at in the ESPN article. Now that, the foreign guys are going to that combine and are getting their measurements taken in Italy. So talk to me about where you're at with him, because this is another guy that it feels like, is it smoke that he's getting all this hype, or is somebody really, really going to swing for the fences here and try to hit a homer?
I'm just not buying the hype. I'm a lot cooler. I've cooled off. I think it's a high energy project I would love to get with another pick. Like, I get why everyone's saying, okay, like, what about the Spurs at 8? Or what about, another team that has 2 picks? I get that. That's my belief is when you have 2 picks, especially in the lottery, you afford to swing and you get someone that could probably contribute early in your mind, early on. I think Saloon, the idea is very exciting of this lengthy, high energy, high motor, forward with size that can space the floor. I get that. I just think there's some feel stuff that's still extremely raw. I've kind of asked around. There's a lot of similar opinions about that. They're just, So I don't know if this is just one of those names that we see get a lot of movement this time of the year, that all of a sudden draft night comes and it's like, oh, he went 17th. But I get if you're swinging, because that raw with a good foundation of, like, hey, high energy, he runs all over the place like a madman. So you can tell the determination. But if you have that size, that length, and just so raw with the potential to potentially be like a floor spacer, I get if you're excited to work with that. But I just think it's a bigger project in my mind. But it's also, this is a guy that fit is going to be really tremendous. Like, if he goes and plays alongside Victor and you're just like, hey, play your butt off, hit the outside shot, rebound. Yeah, he could check those boxes. I just think I don't know if I'm swinging that early with a guy like this. What about you?
I like him. I kind of like the upside, and I think I'm probably higher on the upside than maybe some of the other people at No Ceilings are. Because when I look at him and I go, all right, if we're just strictly talking like what is his upside, I look at a guy who, if he's going to shoot 38, 39, 40%, if he figures that part out and that's what a team is betting on and they get that guy that they foresaw, you're looking at a guy that I think fills kind of like a Michael Porter Jr. type role on a contending team because he is legitimately big and you're not going to block his shot. He's shown a little bit of like the self-creation. It looks a little stiff, but you know, Porter Jr. with all his back injuries, he's pretty stiff too doing all that, but he's so big. Porter Jr. obviously has incredible touch and he was always billed as a good shooter and scorer. So like different. But if that's what you're getting with Salam, the guy who's making the shots, then you have a guy who can back cut, finish at the rim with power, not with grace, because he doesn't have great touch. And I don't know how much of that stuff he develops. But I think with shooting, we see teams get guys to where they need to go as far as like spotting up and all of that. The fact that he plays so hard and that he cares is a really good sign because, you know, if you're going, all right, well, he could be Michael Porter Jr., but he can also be Kevin Knox. You know, I think the rumors are that, like, you know, Kevin Knox didn't necessarily want to work as hard as he needed to work to be what he could have been. And so it was not about the talent. It was about how do you mold that talent in the proper way. If those questions don't need to be answered with Tijan, then I think that if you're going to take a swing, I think, and you believe that he's going to shoot it, even though he's been so inconsistent, but you've seen him do it in these high level flashes, I get buying into it. I just think that with that said, you have to, on your upside scale, you have to go, all right, well, how volatile is he? Am I completely going to strike out? Like, I might hit a home run, but am I swinging at a pitch that's in the dirt? Or am I swinging just a little bit outside? I could still get to it. That's what you kind of have to figure out with him. And I think that's obviously coming in at 21. I mean, I think that's where most people are at No Ceilings. I'm a little bit higher, but I totally get the downside and I get why teams would be afraid, because if you do like this draft and you do think there's talent, there are safer guys. Some teams don't want to play it safe. You know, I had a front office executive tell me you could get Dyson Daniels in any draft. You got to swing.
Yeah.
So
sooner or later, you got to swing. Go ahead.
Yeah. So like some front offices are just more risk averse and some are willing to take those risks. So if you're one of the front offices that are like, you got to swing when you're in the lottery, I mean, are there worse or how many swings have as much upside than the guy who's 6'10" with a 7'2" wingspan and could potentially, you know, shoot the ball from behind the logo and has the confidence to do it, as he showed hitting that kind of shot in the playoffs?
For sure. I mean, he takes some catch and shoot threes. I know we got him at 31%, but he takes some catch and shoot threes where you're like, oh my gosh. Like, that was catch and shoot away from momentum 5 feet beyond the arc, nothing but net. So like when the highs are very impressive, he's just a guy that if in a normal, not in a normal draft, in this draft, if I had to pick, like if I was Portland and I got the guy I wanted at 7 and I like Saloon, if he was there at 14, yes, I would swing. That would be my swing. Or if I love a guy that's going to be there probably at 14 and you got Saloon at 7, that makes sense to me. I just think if you have one pick and you're picking early and you really swing on that one, might need to find a job somewhere else if you strike out. Like, it is just a huge swing. But if it does come together, that's a really fun foundation to have. So I get why people are high on him. It's just I'm a little bit cooler, but at some point the potential for a humongous swing, if you have that job security, is worth it. Let's keep rolling. Let's keep this rolling.
Can we talk about where?
Yeah, we can do it.
And before we finish off the first 30 guys.
Yeah, and then we can hammer through any second round thoughts. And for everyone listening, you guys go to noceilingsnba.com, see the whole top 60. I'm buying back on where.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard good things. I've heard he's interviewing well. I think he could go much earlier. Then obviously this is not a mock draft, so we have him at 24. But everyone remember, he's moved up 7 spots. That's very big. That's very notable this time of the year of how people are feeling about him at No Ceilings. Are you cooling? Are you still a little cool?
No.
Are you hesitant? No, I'm a big fan. It's not just what Derek Lively's done in the playoffs that I think is getting me to buy in on where. That's not it. I just have loved what I've heard. And going back and watching the tape, seeing how he progressed this year, finished the year, I think there's a real place in which he ends up being fantastic value. If he lands with the right team, obviously, we say that about everyone, but especially where. Like if he goes somewhere where he can be a perfect fit.
Like Lively.
Yep. Just like
Lively went to the place where he was the perfect fit. I definitely think the Lively Gafford thing helps his stock.
100%. With teams, they're looking at that. I think I actually talked to someone, a team, and the first comment, where? Look at Derek Lively.
Right.
Everyone's going to be looking for that now.
And that was a conversation last year. That was a debate.
Yep.
Where Lively, right? And where, obviously, there was the motor stuff. But if you go and you look at like Ware's production, though inconsistent, because one game he might have been playing 25 minutes, the next he might have been playing 8. If you go and look at his advanced stats, they were all pretty solid last year. Even looking at his season as a disappointment, you go, oh, you know what? There's some stuff to work with. And then he built on a lot of the stuff he did. Killer defensive rebounder, finishing, touch, all of that stuff, consistency, played 30 minutes a game. I saw him a couple of times. And so this year I was impressed when I saw him because I was like, this dude is gigantic. He is super long. Dudes are afraid to even like test him at sometimes. When he's in drop, his length, just sitting at the elbow, he's able to still contest shooters coming off the screen. I was impressed. I think some of the passing stuff he did was pretty impressive. I don't think he's the passer that Derek Lively was last year and is now. But I think he's somebody who's going to be able to pass it. It's like Missy only had like a 3% assist percentage, right? Like if I'm not betting on Missy to necessarily all of a sudden become Bam at the next level, but like Kel'el Ware has a little bit of passing to him that you can at least buy into, that he's going to be able to make reads that he needs to make. The 3-point shooting, I could see it in the long term. I'm not expecting him to do much of it early on, just because the volume was so low, and I think he's got to make some mechanical tweaks, and the free throw percentage is pretty inconsistent. But the mid-range kind of like turnaround that he goes to, spinning off like the opposite shoulder that people normally turn when they're hitting these fadeaways. He has impressive natural tools, impressive physical tools. I think he graded out as one of the best combine athletic testing ever this year. So he's not a perfect prospect. He obviously has some of that baggage, but I think sometimes we just see like big men have this reputation because it takes them a little longer to figure out how they need to play. Because if you're 7 foot growing up in high school, like how many 7-footers are there on earth, let alone in high school? You know what I mean? Like you can't prepare for the physicality and like people being at your level when you're that young, really, because it doesn't exist for you. It's not possible. So for him, maybe he's humbled. There's a little wake up call. And, I think he's got a lot of talent. It would not surprise me at all if he was another guy who found his way into the lottery on draft night. Because again, if you're going to swinging on a 7-footer with a 7'6" wingspan with an archetype that's had some success this year and is playing in the finals. Even if you look at a guy like Robert Williams when he was with the Celtics before, like somewhat similar, and Ware's taller. So like there's a lot of Tyson Chandler. You want to go back further if that's your cup of tea. And he could potentially stretch it out a little bit. There are worse bets than that, man. And like, he's still young, and he was a 5-star McDonald's All-American. All this, he's got the blue chip stuff. I like him.
It's just what we talked about, or what you hinted about to start the whole podcast. It's some of these guys don't find their groove the first year. Like I said, I hinted at it before. I've heard the interviews have been great. I've heard he just has kind of humbled himself. He understands what he is. And I think, the common analysis, I'll put it that way, of what I've been told is just, big expectations this first year at Oregon. Probably just, some of these guys don't hit the ground running. Some of these guys are trying to catch up, get a feel, and you're so spot on. And we always have to remember this with bigs. Like, they're just funky. They click at different weird times, and all of a sudden everything starts to come together. He had a fantastic year. He had a 11 game stretch of averaging 19, 10, and 2 on 66.50. But I take the 3-point percentage always with an asterisk because it is low volume. But if he is a low volume guy that's efficient from downtown and just can make you respect that shot with the shot blocking, with the tools. Yeah. I mean, I have him as my 3rd ranked big behind Klingon and Sar, not in order, but I love where I'm buying in. I'm just really intrigued with the upside. I think if things keep trending in this direction, I'm right there with you. I wouldn't be shocked if he's a lottery swing. I think he's got some good momentum trending right now.
A lot of good bigs in this class. Really like good the bigs in this class. All right, 26, we got Jalen Tyson. 27, Kevin McCullough. 28, Tyler Kolek. 29, Yves Missy. And 30, AJ Johnson.
Well, let's pick whoever you want to talk, and then anyone in the second round that catches your mind, and then we could put a bow on this one because everyone can go scramble through the second round and get after it.
You tell me who you want to talk about in this crop, because
it's a fun group that I'm very interested to see where they go draft night. We still love. Go ahead.
AJ Johnson at 30, he had a good combine showing in the scrimmages. I've heard that, he's potentially got a first round promise. He's a guy that, I've had a team say, it's been hard getting him in for a workout. Maybe we think he might have been promised. I don't want to report anything officially that he has, but I think that's another upside swing, maybe a little bit more raw, take some time, in the long run. But he's definitely a guy with some talent, blue chip status, and that wouldn't surprise me in this draft. I think having Tyson and McCullough back to back is interesting. Both guys a little bit older. One a junior, one like a super senior. Right. But 2 guys who play the wing, one guy a little more offensively tilted, one a little more defensively tilted. If you were on the clock for a team and you had to choose between Jalen Tyson or Kevin McCullough, what are you telling your GM that you think they should do?
I mean, if everything checks out medical wise, I would lean McCullough. Obviously, any answer I ever give would be based on roster construction, but I think McCullough just has the versatility I want defensively. I love the strides he took this year offensively. It was kind of more of a shock. Like, everyone will point at his 3-point percentage and be like, At some point this year, with how he was shooting it, I was just shocked at the stride he took. So I would still lean McCullough a little bit just because I think he's got more versatility on both sides. But I really like Tyson. If I needed an offensive punch, I understand going Tyson. It's a really interesting back-to-back because I'm fascinated to see where both of them go. I could see a team falling in love with each of them, and they either go earlier or they slide a little bit and someone jumps all over it. What about you? Are you still McCullough or Tyson?
I think I would go Tyson.
Yeah.
I think
his film. It's nice. He has some wiggle.
I think if he figures out the decision-making stuff, then his offensive game is pretty slick.
Yeah.
In a real way, and he has like real wing height, and the frame to like actually, hang in with the physicality of the league. Now, I had a front office executive text me, and they were like, "Hey," or we were on a call, and he's like, what do you think of Malcolm Brogdon as a comp for Jalen Tyson?" And I thought it was interesting. I think I trust Malcolm Brogdon in his decision making a little bit more, but kind of like big playmaker who can use his physicality, make shots, right? I was like, I think he's maybe like a bigger Denzel Valentine.
Gosh,
and
fucking name drop. Excuse language. But I get it. I like the more I watched his film, there's more areas that popped for me offensively, where I was like, oh, you can go in the post too and put people in the blender, and then so I get it. The decision making, he has some passes that were just playmaking wise. He had some passes, some reads where I was like, where did that come from? Like, just really impressive. But the consistency, I feel like it's kind of where you're leaning on, or what do you want to see more from him?
Just, I want to see the decision making improve.
Yeah,
that he'll throw some passes that I'm like, come on, man, we didn't need that one. I like you experimenting, and if you were 18, I'd be like, let's live with that. But as like a junior, you got to be able to rein yourself in some of the time. But then again, like, he's capable of seeing this stuff. So who knows, with more space, better athletes, better shooters, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, I love Kevin McCullough. I love Kev. And, if you're telling me that Kevin McCullough is one of the 10 most impactful players in this draft 5 years from now, I'm not telling you you're wrong if he, holds up with his health. I've spent a lot of time around Kevin. Yeah. He has quarterback charisma. He is an awesome worker. He knows his strengths. He knows his weaknesses. He loves taking defense personally. He's clearly just the type of guy you want when you're winning. Like, if you're a winning team, he does the little things. I wrote a piece on him last draft cycle talking about, like, the article was called Kevin McCullough as a Star, because I feel like Kevin McCullough is going to star in his role. And I have no questions about that. The only questions are with all of the consistent injuries that he has. And I've kind of shied away from the injury thing, like being overly concerned typically when, a prospect is billed as like this injury prone guy, but Kevin's had a lot over the years. So I do take that into account with him somewhat, but the way he defends, his passing, his playmaking, his poise, he's got everything you want except the shot. But being around him, I know he made an effort to get better as a shooter. Okay. So he's working on his shot. I think his touch is really good. Like, it's soft. He didn't want to change his form because he knows that when he gets with an NBA shooting coach, they might ask him to change it. So he didn't want to be messing with his mechanics multiple times and kind of screw himself up. He was waiting to change his mechanics until he got to the next level, and he had a team that he can be confident with and was going to develop with and have time with. And that's when the focus was going to be on his mechanics. So I'm buying him even as a spot up shooter, good free throw shooter. I think he's going to get there, and you're not going to be able to leave him open, and he'll attack closeouts and get into the paint. I think his offensive upside is probably still a little bit lower than Tyson's. And so it depends what you need. It depends on the roster. I think it's close. So having them back to back here, I think, is actually a pretty good juxtaposition of, like, the kind of role and players that are going to be around potentially at this part of the draft.
Well said. All right. Before we go, give me one second round guy that you like, that you think's going to go a little earlier. I'll give you one guy. We'll put a bow on this.
All right. Let me run through this list really quick.
Everyone listening, you go to NoCeilingsNBA.com. You'll see the top 60. There's a lot of really fun depth, interesting names.
Okay. I'm going to go with Jonathan Mobo from San Francisco.
Yup, that's a good
Uh,
one. I like that. And then I'll throw Pacome.a.
okay.
Continue.
So Mobo, 6'8", 7'2" wingspan, late growth spurt guy, played guard all his life. Went to San Francisco. That he was a JUCO guy. Ended up at San Francisco this year. Had a monster year, and this was a guy that teams were asking about back in like January when I was going to games, and I think that he's super interesting. He showed it in the combine. Crazy playmaker at his size, showing that guard skill. Really slick. Had like 80 plus dunks. Just crazy rim pressure guy. Screen and roll, short roll passer, post passer. The jumper is non-existent right now, but I think he's super interesting. I just did a film session with him. Great personality. I think his game is, tailored for the modern NBA, even if he doesn't shoot it as like a monster small ball five. He said he likes watching guys like Naz Reid, and that's the kind of energy player he thinks he could be at the league as he potentially develops the 3-point shot. But I just think he's so weird and funky, and he had a statistical season as far as like his defensive rebounding, his playmaking, and steal and block percentages that only compared to Draymond Green.
He's a stud.
Yeah.
He's another fantastic film. Like when you just turn it on, because he's got the guard skills from being a late bloomer. He makes some passes that you're like, okay, a big fellow that can, and I know he's got the undersized listing, but like good length. The versatility just is something that will always keep teams intrigued. Pacome.a, I'm just going to hit on quick. I love him. I think that's my upside swing. Shout out to Stephen Gillespie. He wrote a piece about Pacome today at NoCeilingsNBA.com. It's free. Go check it out. I just love the tools. I think there's some really special stuff offensively. Young wing with size, good feel, just in terms of kind of playing with his own pace. And I buy the shot. So I think that's another, he continues to climb each time we have an update. And I think he's going to be a name to another wild card to keep an eye on, like we talked about with Bub.
You know what's interesting in that Gavoni piece? I don't know if you read the Pacome part.
I haven't yet. This is what I do when I'm getting pissed off about the Celtics. I start reading draft articles. So probably read it in like 10 minutes.
He made a mention that Pacome is one to monitor as a guy who might withdraw his name from this draft.
That wouldn't surprise me either, because I think he's got a lot to gain by another year, because that was a very stacked ratio team. They just won I think their league title the year before and had like everyone coming back. So the fact that he got that much minutes just shows you about his talent. But very interesting little breadcrumb right there from Gavoni.
I think he would be smart to do that.
I do too, because I think as much as we like him, as much as we like the potential, because of the depth in that range, he'd have to be feeling like, oh, I'm going late teens or getting a promise in the 20s. And I don't know if he is. And he could be a guy that all of a sudden we're like, how did he go 39th? And I think if another year of development, he could be a guy that we're talking about, even with a stacked class, he might be going top 25.
Yeah, he built some buzz for himself. He makes some improvements. Yep. He gets better on the defensive end, shoots it a little bit more consistently, right? And now all of a sudden, some of the ball handling, shot creation stuff he was doing, now you're like, oh wow, okay, like this is real. So I think he would be smart to develop, and now that he's on the radar on a real way, kind of have a little breakout year next year and get himself into that top 20 potentially.
Yeah, because one thing I will say to end that is I had a fan once reach out to me and ask like, hey, do you think Pacome could climb like Coulibaly? And I was like, I doubt it, because you just don't get that much of a late just avalanche of buzz.
He doesn't have the sexy of Bilal, like the athleticism.
Yep. Victor was the exposure for Bilal, so he had that working for him because everyone wanted to watch those games. And then he didn't have the freakish length or the, like you said, the sexy athleticism tools So I think Pacome, when you're creating that much, or when you're creating buzz this late, it's tough to really come out of nowhere and just cook up boards. So I think it's really smart when guys start making buzz, go back. Now you're really on the radar. If you could take another step, you'd be cooking. So I get that. I think that's an interesting little breadcrumb from Gavoni. It's going to crush my heart if he withdraws, just because I want to see what he goes on the draft night. But I would get that. I'd be very excited for another year of him to develop.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. That was a fun episode.
It was great. I mean, I'm shocked that we, kept it under 3 hours, because I feel like me and you could talk hoops forever.
Well, because we kind of breezed through, to be perfectly honest. I mean,
yeah, you got finals, Come on, guys. Yeah, I gotta stress this one out. But any other lasting thoughts before we close this one out, Corey?
No, I'm just excited for the rest of this draft cycle. We have a lot of fun stuff coming up. You're going to see our faces popping up on other platforms for sure. You hinted at it. We got a big week of guests next week. A lot more player interviews and player film sessions coming to the YouTube channel. So if you're watching there, make sure you like and subscribe now while you're here. That way you don't miss it. Turn on your notifications while you're at it because, we're going live. We got all this content coming out. You might as well just watch it all so you're prepared. So when your friends in the group chat are like, who the hell are we taking at 17? You could be like, these are the guys that we should take at 17. You're going to be the smart one if you listen to us. So, make sure you do that. And if you're listening on the podcast platform, why not, share it, rate, review, 5 stars for your boys.
That would help out a lot.
And your girl. Shout out Paige.
And the girls out there. All right. Well, let's close this one out. Corey, thanks for jumping on with me. Hopefully we're going to get Metcalf back next week. I think I have confirmed he's going to be back because we do have a special guest. And I know another podcast on this feed is going to have a special guest. So it's going to be very exciting times moving forward. We'll have plenty of stuff cooking in the kitchen and going up on the site. But Corey, thank you for joining me, coming off the bench like Jordan. And for everyone, keep
Jordan Crawford.
Keep an eye on NoCeilingsNBA.com. Follow us on NoCeilingsNBA on all social streams. And check out the pod, like Corey said. All right, guys. We love you. Happy draft season. Stay safe.
And hydrated. Peace.